Hello out there in cryptocurrency land. Welcome back to Real Crypto, where we take the markets one leg at a time while keeping the market cycle in mind. And Bitcoin lately has been in kind of a little bit of a funk. What we have is a very choppy market in Bitcoin going here over the past week or so. So let's zoom out a little bit here on the BTC chart. I've got a couple of lines drawn for you here. So number one, we have a potential for an inverted head and shoulders on BTC at this stage of the game. Could be a multiple headed bottom here. And then we have a left shoulder right here. Now, the way these inverted head and shoulders work, I'm sure you guys know, I have this neckline drawn between the middle points of each shoulder and the head. So here, and there's the high point, here, and there's the high point. So these are your shoulders. And we draw a line across here, and this would be your neckline break. This is actually when the pattern breaks out. But Bitcoin has decided to do things a little bit differently this time around and put in a little symmetrical triangle before we're either breaking out or breaking down from the pattern. Now, when you break down from a head and shoulders pattern, you take the right shoulder, and in this case is an inverted head and shoulders, so we take the low of the shoulder, and if we get below this level, this would negate the head and shoulders pattern. This would put us pretty much back into a downtrend technically. Now, if we break to the upside here, at this stage of the game, we're looking for this trend line right here to break, so let's zoom in on this. So you can see here we popped up the other day. We had some nice green volume. And it's not as healthy as it seems. If you look at my volume aggregation tool, the red here implies selling pressure, the green implies buying pressure. You'll notice the selling pressure actually increased on the way up. It's a very interesting way that this folded out in terms of the volume aggregation tool. But regardless, we put a high in here, moved lower, moved higher, put in a lower high, and this gives us this line, this gives us this line. Now, how you play these situations, these are actually coin volatility funnels. A user pointed me out to another YouTuber. I forget the guy's name. I'm sorry. But what he basically, he walked over how we typically handle symmetrical triangles, and he called it a volatility funnel. You may be able to Google that on your own. But I like how he handles it. It's basically very similar to how I handled it. He just kind of coined it. So what you do with a volatility funnel is you essentially, once the volatility kind of lays itself out like such, then you end up in the middle. Once you have your third or fourth point, these are now your buy points and your sell points right here. All right, so at this stage of the game, I don't think we have a very well-defined volatility funnel. I don't think that we can assume that this is going to break out here or break down here at this stage of the game. But we do have a fairly well-formed symmetrical triangle, and breaking the trend line in either direction will give you your actual trend. Now, as we continue in this, you're going to be very choppy. Now, we have trended up nicely, trended down nicely, reversed, trended up nicely. We topped here. Now we're trending down fairly nicely. It may be an easy trip lower, and then maybe an easy trip higher, each taking a few days before finally breaking out in a week or so. But right now, that's the future. All I see right now is choppy action. Ever since really we put in this top up here, we've been discussing in the Power Hour about how choppy this market is and how unpredictable it's going to be. There's a couple opportunities to short if you caught the right candle, but other than that, it's been pretty difficult. I mean, once you barred it up here on the long side, once you're out of here, you don't have a lot to go to the top, so that's not a very good risk-reward trade, and we haven't been really talking much about trading to the long side. But Bitcoin here with the possibility for inverted head and shoulders. Now, if this does break to the upside, this actually takes you to the $5,300 range via a target. And for those of you new to the channel, how you derive a target from a head and shoulders pattern, inverted or otherwise, is you actually draw a straight line from the top of the head to the neckline, and you basically just move that line and place the bottom of it or the top of it in the normal head and shoulders pattern, and this should be your target. So if it breaks out over here, it says 52.72. Let's say it barts up today, puts you in 53.57. So the longer this goes, the lower your price target's going to be. Now, these price targets, they're a little bit arbitrary. They're not guaranteed to hit, but if you get 75% out of them, I consider that a win personally. But we're also not guaranteed to break out inverted head and shoulders. While they're actually more statistically, the probability of them working is statistically higher than a head and shoulders pattern. A head and shoulders pattern top is about 50-50. This is about 75% accurate, according to the Bukowski books. But anyway, there's a possibility this moves up, but if it doesn't, it would actually keep a long-term Bitcoin trend in place. And I'm going to go to the daily chart for this one, and we'll come back and talk a little more fundamentally about these. So Bitcoin has had a history all throughout this bear market, and it really hasn't broken this, albeit but one time right there. Every time we have a swing high in Bitcoin, it never breaches it. It hasn't breached it once. Well, let me take that back. It did breach it once, but it was kind of a fake out move. So we have a few swing highs. You could probably even consider this a swing high in Bitcoin. So we have this first swing high up at 17,000, the next down here at 12,000, the next down here at 9,800, and this one and this one. Now, this one is a little bit different right here. This one we actually did overtake the swing high for about a day or two. Kind of a tricky. We had a kind of a bit of a cup and handle right there, but it was very weak. See, the volume was very minuscule. And it rolled over immediately. So each of these swing highs has not been eclipsed. So swing high, swing high, swing high, swing high. I'm not considering any of these here swing highs. Swing highs really imply a reversal and then a continuation. A reversal and then a continuation. Reversal and then a continuation. Not much of a reversal here or here. Now down here we have a swing low. So these are each swing lows right here. Now here we have a swing low here. But we don't actually have a swing high. I'm not so sure if I would... This is definitely, to me, not a swing high. If you can see, there's not a lot of space to the left of it. Each of these have quite a bit of space on each side of them. And it's pretty obvious, they're like mountain peaks, right? Here, there's no major mountain peak. You could argue this could be a swing high. And, that could be arguable. But we really don't have a swing high. So if we do get that run up in Bitcoin to, say, 5,300, what does that give us? It gives us a swing high. So even if we break up higher, that downtrend in Bitcoin isn't necessarily broken. Okay, you can see each swing high here in comparison, and if you want to, you could even consider just before we broke, you consider that high a swing high if you really want to. But you can see here, this would not break us out of the bear trend from any stretch of the imagination. It would just perpetuate what has been a very deep and long bear market in Bitcoin. And if you guys haven't seen my videos from way back, or if you forgot about it, I want to touch on the bigger picture here, much bigger picture. So actually to do this, I have to move my charts over to Bitstamp since we can get the old school charts in here. So Bitcoin from the ultimate low in I think it was 2015, it finally bottomed. It was at $151 and change. I'm not going to be able to get it exactly, but 145 is close enough. We had essentially, it's hard to see there with my, but it says 13,000%. We had a 13,000% rise in Bitcoin. That is astronomical. I'm sure all of you are here due to that rise, and it's an astronomical rise. It is going to take quite a long time for that to wear itself out. So every single increase has a base. You actually see them here. You see them here on the chart. So you have a rise and a subsequent base. A rise and a subsequent base. Notice this base gets really deep. Actually comes down to the breakout point. That happens quite often. Rise, subsequent base. Rise, base. So it's a sequence of ups and downs, rises and bases. If you take this on a logarithmic scale and zoom out, I mean, everyone's seen these charts. This is nothing new to you guys. For some reason I can't fit it all in one chart. I have to go to the weekly. But what you'll see is a series of events very similar from the longer term scale and the shorter term scale. Rise and a base, rise and a base, rise and a base, rise and a long base, rise and a long base. So this base has a little bit more work to do, and like I said, that move to 53 would not be out of the ordinary. It would just be another series of lower highs. But in time, this will reverse. Now, I mentioned earlier bases tend to come down to prior highs. Bitcoin hasn't necessarily had that, hasn't always had that become true, which I find interesting. So here's the first base that Bitstamp has. I know there's like one or two more in a sub $1, but we have a rise and a base, and then we have another rise, and this base is almost immediately and bottoms out. Okay, we have this next rise, which cuts into the prior high. So this hits the prior high here. This does not hit this prior high. Okay, so it doesn't have to hit the prior high, but in a majority of cases, at least 50%, it does. Some of the earlier bases, it did not hit the prior high, just so you know. This one hit the prior high. Now, the prior high at this stage of the game is right there at about 1182. Just call it 1200 for easy math. Now, I think there's a decent possibility that we actually get down to that $1,200 mark. if you guys have been watching my videos a while, you'll see that my range for the bottom, ever since January to December, I don't remember exactly, has actually been 3,600 to 2,400. I've been discussing this level for an extremely long period of time, just to let you guys know up front what I've been talking about if you haven't been included in my prior videos. So roundabout, that's 36 to 2,400. We've actually come into this range and we haven't had what's called capitulation. And without capitulation in this range, while we're dipping into this, the odds are this is not the bottoming range. So the bottoming range would be lower. And really the only things down here that have any kind of consequence is somewhere here around 1,300. And you can see that's right about where that line is. You have a spike low down here at about 1844. So there's going to be a very wide percentage range. Now, it seems saying, in the 1,000s seems normal when you're used to, 10,000 to 20,000 Bitcoin. $1,000 is 10%, but $1,000 down here is about 40 to 50%. So it's still quite a large range for a potential bottom. But I do believe the bottom will be lower than my initial range of 3,600 to 2,400. So it would also make sense that because we had the 13,000% increase, that we have a deeper correction than we normally did. Bitcoin, I don't believe, has ever had this large of a price increase. Neither has pretty much any financial asset in any point had this kind of a price increase. So it would also make sense that because of that large price increase, it would make sense for it to base for longer and for deeper. So, we're all hoping, going by historical precedents, is going down about 86% to the downside. Looks like more than likely we're going to go down much further. Now, in the more intermediate term, are we going to get that bounce up to the 5,200? It's a possibility. I don't have any money for that scenario right now, but if we do get a breakout of that symmetrical triangle that I was referring to and into this range here, I will be participating in that upside movement. Whether it stops or continues, we'll have to wait and see what the volume looks like on the breakout. So that's pretty much what I'm looking at for Bitcoin right now. And we've been talking about this scenario for a little bit now in the Power Hour. We've been talking about this move to 5,200 ever since we kind of had this barred up situation here when we had this little low that put in our right shoulder for this potential inverted head and shoulders. And you see a lot of the other coins in the market doing very similar things to Bitcoin. There's actually quite a few inverted head and shoulders. One of my favorites is XMR. We've been hawking this one. It actually broke out of its little declining trend line right there. Currently underneath it, however, not showing a lot of strength, not really getting up towards its neckline. So again, just because a pattern is in place doesn't necessarily mean it's guaranteed to break out. You don't buy anything simply because it has a pattern. You buy it because it's behaving correctly as it's breaking out of the pattern. And actually, there's a good example of that. One we've been watching for a couple of weeks now is Chainlink coin. It's Link on Binance. It is one of my favorite charts in the market right now. I'll start you guys out on the big picture. It's by far my favorite altcoin right now. And looking at it, it actually is a pretty good coin. Actually, it's a network platform, and it looks like a pretty good one. So you can see we have the ICO back here. It bounces up and puts in a high, have a nice declining trend line, and it broke up higher here. See on the very nice breakout. Volume has been very nice to the upside here. Not a lot of volatility. Not too much volatility, not too much downside pressure. My volume aggregation tool actually does show some selling, but recently it's actually spiked to the upside here on my green, basically with this one green candle. But there is a possibility with Link getting towards highs that we could actually have a breakout here in Link. We have seen other platform coins make huge moves. We've seen waves with massive moves, and we've been following waves here in the Power Hour. See this little curl right there? Yeah, I drew that in real time. And we've been following it since then. We didn't call or know it was going to do this, but sometimes you do the analysis and you get a little bit lucky. I'll take luck from time to time. But Waves has had a huge move. So these things can have, he is like over 350% to the ultimate high. These things can have huge moves, and there's a possibility Link could be one of the next ones to do a huge move. It's coming up towards all-time highs, knocking on the door of a pretty solid resistance point. We have 9,500 as a current alert level. It actually already broke that. It's slightly underneath it right now, but it broke it earlier today. So we'll see if this high volume is the end of the move or if it continues. But we've been following Link pretty handily on the 2-hour chart. which is what I usually chart on, you can see the very nice base formed right here, and then nice little tightening pattern as we move through the trend line. It formed a horizontal level of resistance at 80.92. This was our alert level here, and it broke out, and now we had 9,500. Looks like, and this was triggered earlier today, holding up very nicely. So I'm really happy with Link and how it's been performing. Basically the past 24 hours, 22 hours, it's been doing very well. One of the only coins on my watch list actually doing something. So, you know, every day in the Power Hour, we follow about 150 to 170 coins. I go through them every day for you guys. We put out newsletters. We chat about it live. You guys can ask questions. And we've pretty much been talking about Link, Tron, some of the Ethereum movements. But it's been a very quiet market as of late. Very pointed investments in some very specific coins. A lot of those smaller platform coins we mentioned, Waves, Chainlink. There have been a couple others, but it's been very, very pointed, and you kind of have to understand the nuances of the chart in order to get in on some of these. And so anyway, so we've been doing good in the Link, and I really think Bitcoin could have the possibility to move out of this, but we'll just have to wait and see what the price action gives us. So all right, guys, well, there you go. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. If you do enjoy my services, please go ahead and check out my website. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button with the alerts, and you can also go ahead and check out our Slack chat room if you want to as well. You can go to my homepage, real-crypto.com. Right here, you can sign up for the newsletter and the free chat room. I actually don't send out newsletters, so this is just a sign up for our Slack chat room. There's just under 600 people in there, and it's a very good community of traders. So if you guys don't feel like joining the Power Hour, that's perfectly fine. If you guys want to chime in and say hi, go ahead and join our Slack chat room. All right, guys, well, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.